Greetings, Otaku faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief.
And Bryce Duncan.
That's right. This week, I'm joined by my best friend, Bryce Duncan, to bring you all yet again another Discussion of the Week video segment right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly. As always, we're here to bring you the latest in this week's Discussion of the Week topic. Now, before we jump into this week's topic, I want to go ahead and just pretty much explain to you all why we're not discussing the whole religious stereotype topic that was voted up last week. Because I noticed that in regards with the whole stereotype issue, I've pretty much discussed all of that in previous videos. And originally Bryce was supposed to come in and, guest spot on that video. So I'll just go ahead and let Bryce pretty much, iron out, final, solidify the whole detail bit with the whole stereotype.
That's right, folks. Look, it's real simple. For all groups in general, don't generalize based off the extremists. Don't judge Christianity based off Westboro Baptist. Don't judge Muslims based off radical Islam. It's most people in either group aren't that crazy. It's real fucking simple. So don't do it. It's really obvious. He's discussed this in other videos. He's made this.
Don't forget the media.
Yes, and the media. The media covers. The media likes to cover controversy because controversy sells, and the media is polarizing, and that's the same shit that Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert have been making for years, and it's dull and it's trite. So don't judge religious people based off the worst people within the group, or any group for that matter.
Good point. All right, and with that being said, now let's jump into this week's discussion topic. And I decided to go back into the whole comment pool, and I found a gem. Yeah. And this week's discussion topic comes from Miss Mind Speaks, and she asked, discussion of the week, the value of education. Having an education is supposed to open windows of opportunity and a way for people to improve their social status. In today's economy, with increasing college tuition costs and the widening gap between the rich and the poor, do you believe that this is still the case? Where do you think our educational system stands? Is there a such thing as a useless diploma or degree, which we will talk about in a lot of detail?
Yeah.
How will the increasing demand for better math and science education affect society? So, Bryce, I know you're new to the format, but for the viewers, as I've done in the past, pretty much tackle the topic by addressing each question, and then we'll wrap this up with final thoughts. So, first question, and it is, all right, so, having an education is supposed to open windows of opportunity. It's supposed to be a way for people to improve their social status, and with the increasing tuition, the widening gap between rich and poor, is this still the case? So is college really something that people use in order to better themselves? Are some people deciding, hey, the hell with it because it's just not worth the tuition? And is the college education actually paying off as far as developing, people developing themselves?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Well, just to let y'all know, my mother's an English teacher. My stepfather teaches at LSU. My dad has a master's degree in English. Useless diploma. We'll get to that later. And he taught for a while. So, I've grown up in an educated family. As far as an education being useless, no. An education is not useless, but my whole view on contemporary education is it's not really an education. We emphasize math and science so much, and engineering and computer science, to where what we're really getting is vocational training more than an education. In my experience, an education means liberal arts. It means English, history, philosophy, storytellers like Larry and myself. And a lot of people aren't getting that. So no, an education isn't useless by any stretch of the imagination. It does have, at least it did have value. What was some of the other questions?
Well, pretty much, are people still using it to better themselves?
Yeah.
What's the whole thing about, some people are just saying, well, hell, it's not worth it. It costs too much money.
Well, yeah, and that's going to vary from person to person. Obviously, their upbringing, their class status, and whatnot. And yeah, the cost obviously affects your choice, because our first semester at UL, spring of '07 versus spring of 2010, the costs went radically up because the recession hit.
Damn near tripled.
Damn near tripled. And I mean, you know, and that was just, I guess, just poor luck of the draw. I think some people do give up on it because oftentimes, even after you get your 4-year degree, a lot of people they have trouble finding jobs in their field. It might take them 6 months to a year. It's like, well, shit, you know, I spent 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, however long of my life, and I spent this amount of money, and it's not paying off.
Right,
realistically.
Right, because well, and you have to take in consideration today's economic status. Because remember, the whole Occupy Wall Street, dude.
Mm-hmm.
The front runners of that are us, our generation, recent college graduates are at the front runners of that movement. Because the idea is that when we were supposed to graduate, we were supposed to be able to go out and get work. Why? Because we have the degree to back it up, right? You know, you paid all this money for it, but the problem comes into play when there aren't jobs available. You see what I'm saying? It's not that we aren't being hired. It's not that we aren't being hired because someone there's a better person, or that you know, something like that. It's these positions aren't even open. There is no prospect in some of these in some of these industries. So that's where it comes into play. What I do want to comment on, though, the whole idea of whether or not are people using it to better themselves? Because this is my belief on this. Okay, college. I would go as far as to say it is so much more about outside of the classroom as it is inside of the classroom. Because so many times, I mean, to use an example, like people who are naturally introverted, which I'm not saying that there's I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being introverted. Of course, you know, different strokes for different folks. But what I'm saying is, you know, people who just, you know, all they do is study. All they do, they're in the books. Bam, 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 bam. They're graduating 4 years. Some people even less than that. And when you have nothing but that nonstop, you know, working and studying, you have no time to actually experience college. Right. And I'm not talking about, you know, going to clubs, going to bars. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something as simple as, hey, we're sitting in a room doing a video talking about education and its place in today's economy. Shit like that. You know, dude, how many discussions have me, you, AJ, you know, how many religious discussions have we had? How many political discussions have we had? You know, me, you, and Jamal sitting out on Stokes' balcony talking about movie theory and shit. You know, stuff like that. If you aren't putting yourself in the position to acquire that type of knowledge that comes from not just teachers, I'm talking about just your peers. I mean, hell,
coming of age.
Right. How many discussions on film me, you, and Mark have had? You see what I'm saying? Just stuff like that. You're not taking full advantage of the opportunity.
I understand your point about specifically introverted, but regardless of introverted and extroverted, there's this whole idea that college is really just an extension of adolescence, of fear of really growing up, because you just get caught in this pattern of, if you're extroverted, oh yeah, I'm in college, mom and dad are paying my tuition, I don't have any real responsibility, so I go out and party for 4 years. Or even if you're introverted, okay, study, but it's like college is a preset structure, and you're not going out and making stuff, making it out on your own. So I mean, that's why some people view college as just an extended adolescence that you're going through because you're afraid of facing the real world. That's
a very good point. Yeah.
Regardless of if you're introverted and extroverted. Right. But I would say overall, though, unless you're Quentin Tarantino, my favorite director, or Paul Thomas Anderson, who they didn't go to film school. Paul Thomas Anderson dropped out of film school. Quentin Tarantino dropped out of high school because they're that determined to make it. And Robert Rodriguez as well. Those guys, they're just that determined from an early age. That's what they wanted to do. But those guys, as inspiring as it is, I'd say they're the exception to the rule. So I'd still say I'm not knocking going to college at all, or the education, or just the idea of getting an education. But there are often times where it does seem useless, like you aren't paying tuition for an education, just a piece of paper that you put in your resume.
Exactly.
And there is a massive difference between, because if you're just paying for a piece of paper, to put something on a resume, that's not any true sense of accomplishment.
Right.
And there is no real growth in mental, in your mental ability, or your socialization, if you want to put it that way.
Right, exactly. All right, so now the next question is, damn, I was just looking at it. I forgot it already. Shit. Well, I don't really think this is much of a topic for discussion because, as I mentioned before, there are statistics that support this. I mean, this isn't really opinionated, it's actually facts. Where does our education system stand? Last time I checked, dude, we were in the bottom 5 for industrialized countries, and I think we were 3rd to almost damn near last in superpower countries as far as our education system. There are so many other countries, Japan, Germany, England, just to name a few, that actually exceed us in academic achievement.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? We are behind in regards to the rest of the world.
We're barely ahead of Cuba. Oh wait, that's the healthcare. Different topic. I'm sorry.
Oh damn.
According to USA Today.
So yeah, man, I don't even think there's much window on that question. I mean, those are the facts. You can actually, and I mean, granted, I don't have a link to support that, but you can go ahead and just Google, educational system ratings in 2011.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, I would say our standards are, our standards are overall not as high. Our overall education isn't as good, and this is where growing up with a mother who teaches high school English, all it is just this preset. She gets a lot of students who they have terrible upbringings. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. They have all these different issues. So why are they supposed to care about school? But we have these preset curriculums and we put such emphasis, at least down here, of standardized testing. But standardized testing
and memorization.
Memorization, regurgitation, in one ear, out the other. But that's not an education. An education, you're supposed to retain it. That is a technocrat education or something. That's, I don't know, I just have a different view of what a true education is, but that's because Larry and myself, we're in liberal arts, and we just have we just have different views than because everybody emphasizes math and science because math and science creates jobs, but being a mathematician or being a scientist, I'm not knocking those fields by any stretch. They're important, but I'm not sure that they're all that education, at least that they're all that education, that they're all that educated, because I have but that's my own personal criterion of what an education is.
Which brings us into the next question, which is there such a thing as useless diploma or degrees?
Right.
Funny thing was, we were just talking about this the other day because I read an article on Yahoo about the top 10 useless degrees. And the thing is, both me and you being liberal, I guess you can say liberal.
You're in arts,
visual arts, right?
Yeah, you're in visual arts, which I guess technically isn't a liberal art, but it's more along the lines of artistry and storytelling,
right?
Which is liberal,
right? And then you're an English major,
right.
But the thing was, regardless of what you want to call it, visual arts, liberal arts, English, anyway, out of the 10, visual arts was 9th, and English was first. And in their company,
the only thing I can do is teach, folks. Okay.
And in their company was liberal arts, performing arts, all musical arts, all of the arts were in the useless degree lineup.
Right. And that's because in my own field, English, I have some vague pipe dream of being a writer, Quentin Tarantino, filmmaker. This is where you don't have to go to school in order to, I don't have to go to school in order to write. I don't have to go and write a 10-page paper on Othello. Whereas, with physics, you got to go to school and you got to learn all the math behind the physics. So math and science, it is more necessary to go to college for that. But like with something like English, I don't have to have a degree in order to write. Larry doesn't have to. Larry doesn't have to have a degree in order to write a comic book, which he's
Here's the whole
doing.
thing. And funny enough, this actually segues into the last question that was on the comment, was that, how will math and science, this concentration of degrees in math and science and stuff, how will that affect society? This actually, they both correlate. This is the thing, because like you mentioned before, it's what we value. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
There has been less value on the arts and more value on all of the math and science based majors, math and science based studies. Why? Because for some reason we've gotten to the point now where our society, those are what people value.
Right.
Why? Because shit, dude, perfect example. And shout out to Rollin, if you're watching this video. Dude, Rollin was an artist. Wanted to make his own manga and shit. But what was Rollin studying? Wasn't it engineering?
Yes.
Why is that?
Computer engineering, because you will be more. It's easier to, because computer engineers, computer scientists, mathematicians, physicists, all that type of stuff. There's just a higher demand right off the bat. It's easier to find a job. Those jobs are in higher demand, and let's face it, you get paid more. Whereas teachers, they don't get paid shit. So yeah, and whereas with comic booking or writing, it's harder to break into the field, and you won't necessarily be successful right away. So yeah,
Right. But dude, my thing is this. My fear, the fear I have about the way shit's going, this underappreciation, for the arts, dude, we've talked about this many times, when you want to talk about the yoke of civilization, it's art. You see what I'm saying? Say what you will. You can make the claim that the Romans, when they invented them arches, that was all because it was so scientifically advanced and it was so ahead of its time. But that shit was very artistic also.
Of course.
You see what I'm saying? Art helps. What art does, what writing does, what music does, what poetry does, what the humanities as a whole do. They give meaning to our world.
Yeah.
They are the yoke of our culture. Without that, what do we have? A bunch of tall buildings that don't amount for shit.
Yeah, and I mean,
a bunch of roads that we just pave these because it makes easier to travel. Mm-hmm. Really? Or have we fallen that far into mediocrity where we no longer celebrate the extraordinary anymore? It's all about, it seems like at this point, it's all about maintaining the status quo. Yeah. And no one wants, and like we were talking about before, about the whole thing about, going to college, and then of course, the majors, like which ones will get you the better job, and which ones are the most useful, useless and shit like that. No one wants to take the risk anymore. Mm-hmm. That's the idea. And that attitude, I think, is going to shortcome us in the end.
Well, the emphasis on math and science, and in general industrialism. I mean, this goes back to Charlie Chaplin and Charles Dickens. The more we emphasize this, the more we fall into the horror show of being the cog in the wheel, of not having any true sense of achievement or happiness. If the machine replaces the man, then man has no purpose for himself, and that's where the humanities come into play, because writers, painters, whether it be Van Gogh or Dostoevsky, their stories have a way of making us. They tug at our conscience. They make us think of the right and the wrong thing to do. That little thing we all like to talk about called morality. It feeds our. It helps us focus on things in a deeper way than just I have this problem and I plug in these numbers and it works.
Right, and exactly. And to tie it back to what would have been this week's discussion, I mean, dude, isn't that one of the cornerstones of fucking religion? I mean,
yeah, and
stories.
Yeah, and stories, yes, and really to tie it into both. What do we have to stop?
Well, 20 minutes. Well, last 5 minutes. Let's wrap this up.
Okay. Last 5 minutes. Final point, actually, to tie in both. I mean, the first universities. The whole idea of a university used to be in the medieval days. The whole idea of, hey, basically we're united we're collectively united in understanding all these aspects of God's creation, whether it be science or reading or math. Nowadays, it's not really a university in that sense. We're not getting a well-rounded education. There is this emphasis, there's too much emphasis on science and math to where it just, you're receiving too much of one and not enough of the other.
Right.
And that would be my overall point that I would like to make, tying in kind of what the original topic was supposed to be and what we're talking about now.
Right. So, yeah, and pretty much my final thoughts, you pretty much just hit the nail on the head. We're getting too much of one, not enough of the other. Personally, I just think as far as education goes, people aren't taking advantage of it, and because of that, they're being programmed and not thinking, not thinking, not acting, not behaving in a manner that a well-rounded and well-educated person is. And what happens is when you have too many people, or it's just one of another and not enough of the whole, there's a void that gets created.
Yeah, science, and again, we're not knocking mathematics and science. But they should be viewed as one part of gaining knowledge, within the collective whole, not the end-all, be-all of everything.
Right.
Because there are other ways to gain knowledge through experience and through reading and painting.
Oh, that's another fucking thing, dude. Well, this could be a whole nother topic on itself. But dude, correct me if I'm wrong. Into this day and age, how many motherfuckers you know that actually read?
Not regular. I don't know a whole lot of people apart from required reading for school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And would those people honestly be doing that if it wasn't required?
Probably not.
Exactly my point.
I don't like required reading, and I'm the English guy, supposedly.
I don't like required reading either, because most of the time it's
because that's putting it in this more robotic way of, I've got to remember this, instead of experiencing it, enjoying it for what it is, and then thinking about it naturally in your own way, as opposed to just jotting down talking points for some paper that you're not going to remember 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, all in all, dude, I think that wraps up this discussion.
I think it does. Thank you for having me, man.
Not a problem. All
right.
So, anywho, in the comments below, I'm losing my place. Anyway, that'll do it for us. That'll do it this week for this week's Discussion of the Week video segment. And in the comments below, number one, leave your thoughts on this week's topic, but also leave suggestions for next week's topic. And of course, you all know the rules. Thumb up the topic you want to see me discuss in next week's video. Sunday, I got my comic book Hollywood film review of Elektra. And y'all down bad for making me do that. Y'all dirty for that. That ain't cool.
It's a terrible movie.
But anywho, so that'll do it for us. This has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander in Chief,
And Bryce Duncan.
and until next time, peace.